course, that was humorous, but so in this way, the relationships tended to be rather rough. And if you mention the word, the devotee should have loving relationships, that meant you probably fell down from Krishna consciousness. And if someone got married, you weren't supposed to love your wife wasn't supposed to love her husband. It was just supposed to be like some sort of deal, like you go to work for Microsoft. And it was quite a bit different. And the children were just considered little et-ceteras, byproducts that interfered with your real service for making money or distributing books or whatever. So that was, unfortunately, there wasn't that stress on relationships. Of course, Prabhupada, that wasn't from Prabhupada, that was from the devotees in mature understanding, which is quite understandable because the devotees, like myself and everyone else, we were all kids. I mean, you could imagine a movement being run by 21-year-olds and 22-year-olds. And if you were 24, you were grandfather or something. You were an old man. You were a senior Vaishnava. And I took sannyasa when I was 28. I'm 69 now. Going to be 69. It's a lot of years, isn't it? Wow. My anniversary. So anyway, so it was a bunch of kids. It's like kindergarten spiritual life. There's a bunch of kids, and obviously our relationships weren't so good. We weren't trained up, and most of us weren't with Prabhupada a lot. So that's why things were like that. And then when Prabhupada left the planet, things got worse for some time. You had the zonal acharya years, Hare Krishna, which you probably heard about. The zonal acharya years where basically everybody had to be, let's say, a disciple. Even if you were a disciple of Prabhupada, you had to be a disciple of one of the 11 acharyas. And it was a very difficult time for all of us. So in other words, relationships have always been a struggle. And it's understandable because we're a new movement, there were a bunch of young kids, and things are doing better now in the movement. And I'm trying to contribute, to answer your question, I'm trying to contribute to Prabhupada's movement with the relationship strategy or help, because it gives me pain to see people who are not having good relationships with each other. And as I mentioned yesterday, I welcome conflicts because it's necessary to have different opinions. It's how you deal with the conflicts is the point. If you don't have conflicts, you're all dead. You're individuals. You have to have different opinions. But how do you resolve these different opinions? All right, so with that introduction, it's time for Prasadam.
We would like to welcome all the devotees, and we would especially like to welcome Prabhu, welcome Prabhu, coming after a long time.
That's all right. Turn it on.
Thank you for joining. But also we would like to welcome back. Very, very, very happy to see Pratik Prabhu back with us. Pratik Prabhu, Nidhi Mataji and kids. So Maharaj, I was telling you about the devotee who had this brain stroke. So this is his first visit to our program after almost 2 years, almost a year and a half or something like that. Yeah. So we are very, very happy to see you and your family. So let's welcome Pratik Prabhu and family, but loudly chanting.
Haribol! 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 And you're completely cured and everything now?
Almost. Getting there.
That's amazing. I heard about that. The brain stroke was in the stem, right?
Yes, it was in the stem.
Wow.
Yeah, he made through.
Krishna came and saved, like Prahlad Maharaj was saved by Lord.
Because of Krishna and his devotees able to speak today and stand and walk.
It's amazing. amazing. I was with Jayapataka Maharaj when he had his stroke. I was the last person to speak to him before his stroke. And the doctors were saying, he's gone. And then because of his determination and Krishna's mercy, he came out. It's amazing, especially in the brainstem like that. Krishna saved you. Krishna saves the ones he loves. Krishna saved me sometimes too. I'll tell you stories about that, but you don't want to hear it. Krishna saved me in Mahabharata. You got to be careful. I can tell you this brief story. You got to be careful what you ask Krishna for. One time I was in Vrindavan, and I was with a group of people that were arguing with each other, talking about conflicts. And I was thinking, I really don't want to go on parikrama with these people. So I said to Krishna, out loud, it's all right, I don't need another pen. It's cool enough. I said to Krishna out loud that, please, Krishna, make arrangements so I don't have to go on parikrama with these people. That was a mistake, I said that. In Vrindavan, I said that, where every tree is a desired tree, and land is Chintamani. So the next thing I knew, just to be brief, the next thing I knew that the toilet that I was on broke and it split and I had a cut in me this long and this deep. Right next, it didn't hit the artery, but right next to the artery. Because I asked Krishna for something, he fulfilled my desire. And then Maipur was with me at that time. Then they rushed me to the hospital in Mathura. And in Mathura, they're not going to go into all the details, but the doctor asked me if I want to use new needles or used needles.
Oh, good.
They said it costs more for new needles. I said, new needles. So to make a long story short, there's a lot more that happened in the story. I couldn't go on parikrama with these devotees, and more or less, I take it that Krishna spanked me. And fortunately, I didn't get any long-term bad effects from the whole thing, but I had to have 20 stitches, 10 inside, 10 outside. So the moral of the story is, be careful what you ask Krishna for. Because Krishna will fulfill your desire, but maybe not in the way that you like. I mean, just like the story of Narada Muni. Narada Muni one time was feeling romantic. You know the story? He asked for a face that nobody would forget. Nobody knows that story?
Hari.
Yeah, he has a face of Hari. And Hari is a nice maned monkey, so. Lord Narayan. Nobody's heard this story before? Because he was feeling proud that he didn't have any lust or anything like that. So he got interested in one particular girl. So he went to Lord Narayan and he said, give me a face like Hari, or no one will forget. And so Lord Narayan gave him the face of a monkey.
Wow.
So he was at the Swayamvara for this girl, who happened to be Lakshmi. And she went through all the men and she saw, she started laughing when she saw this guy with a monkey face on. And Narada Muni didn't realize that's what he looked like. And then he looked in a mirror and he got really angry at Lord Narayan. And he said to Lord Narayan, because you have done this, I curse you to be dependent on monkeys to get your wife back. You know that, right? And that's part of the story, the Ramayan story. It's nice, isn't it? So, don't ask Krishna for something unless it's a pure devotional story to Krishna. Unless you pray to Krishna for money, and you may get money, but it may cause you to be so much in anxiety you wouldn't believe it. It's always good to pray to Krishna for pure devotional service. Because Krishna says, in the Bhagavatam, Yasha me Purishta Dinam Shanai. That, for those who I especially favor, I take away those things that are impediments in devotion. I take away things. Hari also means to steal or to take away. I take away their wealth. And then I put them in a position, Krishna says, where they can take shelter of the holy names, and even their friends and relatives may reject them. It's interesting. Yashyam. Yeah, so, anyway, be careful what you ask Krishna for. That's the moral of the story. All right, so why don't we chant Chairada Madhava and then begin the program. Well, it's nice to talk informally, at least.
Yes.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihare
Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihare
Jana Bala
Paramahansa, Paravidikacharya, also Teta, Satashi, Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Charana, Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anandakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadha Shiva Siddhi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Bhagavata Sayam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Maturam Ki Jai Jagadata Sami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Harihato. All glorious the assembled devotees, all glorious the assembled devotees, all glorious the assembled devotees, all glorious the Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay, so Om Gana Timidanda Shah Gananjana Shakya Chakshur Meditam Yena Tasmai Shilave Namaha. So I was asked to speak today about purity is the force, right? So I mean that's one of the four, I guess, principles that people used to talk about a lot. You know, books and vases, preaching is the essence, purity is the force, utility is the principle. It's interesting. Prabhupada said purity is the force a number of times, and the other ones he didn't say that much. Actually, Prabhupada never said them all together at the same time. Although that many times these four are attributed to like the essence of Prabhupada's movement and things like that. But and Prabhupada did comment on them from time to time, but Prabhupada never gave them as like the foundational principles, which is interesting. Although devotees sometimes say, Prabhupada said these are the four foundational principles. I mean, they're in line with Prabhupada's desires, that's true. So, but as far as purity is the force, Prabhupada did speak about that particular thing. So, let's talk about purity. Of course, material purity, first we'll talk about material purity, and then I'm going to read a verse in the Bhagavatam that how to achieve purity. Material purity, of course, is sometimes we understand as being clean. And in the Bhagavatam it says in the predictions about Kali Yuga that someone will think he's purified just by taking a bath. It's one of the principles in Kali Yuga. Think, oh, he's clean because he takes a bath. But, you know, there's internal purity, external purity. And of course, there's also something called, which we don't ascribe to, called ritualistic purity. And ritualistic purity is based on the concept that there's many different ideas or concepts that it's based on, like, if you're born in a certain type of family, you know, it's a ritual. Let's say if you were born in a Brahmin family, you know, it's a pure family. A Kshatriya family, it's a little less pure. A Vaishya family, it's okay because you can give some money. And then Shudra, it's funny, nobody rejects the Vaishyas because they have money. Even though the Vaishyas are mixed passion and ignorance. So anyway, so that's sort of like ritualistic purity. Then you have all these ritualistic rules that, for example, after someone in your family dies, some places in India it's 11 days, some places it's 21 days. You know, it depends on where you are in India. You can't go to the temple, you're not supposed to cook, etc. And then there's also ritualistic purity about, let's say a woman gives birth, for a certain number of days she can't come out of the house, or the baby can't see the light, you can't go to the temple. It's interesting that in China it's like 3 or 4 months. The woman's not supposed to go out of the house. How do I know that? Because one of the devotees who I know, Rupa Raghunath, who's in charge of our Food for Life in Vrindavan, married a girl from China. And she couldn't come out for like 4 or 5 months or something like that. I said, oh, I'd like to see your kid. You know, it's 5 months old. Can't. So you have all these ritualistic purity things. And especially Prabhupada would criticize the caste system. Because one doesn't simply become pure by taking birth in a certain family. Like you have Ashwatam, who was born in a Brahmin family. Dronacharya was his father. And he's considered Brahma Bandhu. It means a friend or relative of a Brahmin. And he certainly was not pure, I can tell you that. He did a lot of impure things. So, what we want to touch upon today is spiritual purity. And how to achieve spiritual purity. Of course, spiritual purity is mentioned by Srila Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which we know is the nectar of devotion, in the nutshell verse, which is Ayavilashita Shunyam Gyanakarma Navritam Anukunyena Krishnana Shilanam Bhakti Rutam. And this is actually the type of purity we're interested in. Ayavilashita Shunyam, one should be devoid of desire for liberation, requiring knowledge, or what to speak of material things, devoid of any sort of self-interest, material or even, let us say, spiritual self-interest up to liberation. So one should instead simply want to serve Krishna. And he gives 3 prerequisites. He says, serve Krishna according to what Krishna wants. That's the first thing. Not according to your own mental desire. and also serve Krishna with a favorable mood and be active at it. Those are the three different things. Because one can say, well, I'm serving Krishna by meditating on it. Of course, Krishna says in the Gita that when one's determination never goes beyond dreaming or procrastination, then that's in the mode of ignorance. So some devotees say, I will serve Krishna as soon as things are favorable, as soon as I get to be 60 years old. I renounce everything. I have so many responsibilities. Of course, Prahlad Maharaj says, Kamaram etcharet pragyo dharmam bhagavatam niha nurva manasa janma taratru martham. Human life is very difficult to attain, so you better take up Krishna consciousness from the very beginning of life. Komara Acharet. Acharet means imperative. You must do. Komara Acharet. So getting back to the points of Rupa Goswami's verse, it has to be active, it has to be according to what Krishna wants, and it has to be done with the mood of pleasing Krishna. Like we talked about yesterday, that it's not simply external. So here Rupa Goswami is explaining the same principle. He's saying, yes, you have to do it, and do what Krishna wants and be active to it, but there's a mood. That's what devotional service is. If you just do something for Krishna, and you're not really into it, or doing it with devotion, that's karma yoga. I mean, it's not bad. We're not criticizing. People often think karma yoga means doing what you're doing but being detached about it. I mean, that's a common misconception people have about karma yoga. They say, well, I'm doing what I'm doing, spending money and doing this, but I'm not attached with it. I'm a karma yogi. But the word yoga means to connect or connection, use. So karma yoga means to be connected with Krishna by activity. So if you have activity connected to Krishna without devotion, that's karma yoga. That's the definition of karma yoga. Because if it's not done for Krishna, it ain't karma yoga. It's karma. Take out the yoga and just put it on karma. It's karma. So you have to add this internal aspect. That was the point I was making yesterday. That yes, I'm doing it to please Krishna. And then, that's purity. That's what we mean by purity. Purity means there's no impurity. And the only way you get rid of impurity is by putting something else there in its place. Like we're talking about how to take care of children. If you tell them no, 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 they hear no, no, no is yes, yes, yes. So instead, you say, would you like to do something? Like this morning we were talking to two nice little children, who shall remain nameless to protect the innocent, again. And we were talking to the mother of the children. He said, you have to simply find out what their interest is and engage them and absorb their minds in doing something, learning or something that they like to do. And Prabhupada said that's the business of the spiritual master too. He says to ascertain the psychophysical nature of a disciple and engage them according to that psychophysical nature. That means, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Otherwise, Krishna himself says in the Gita that no one should do anyone else's service. That means no one else should do someone else's service if it's not their psychophysical nature, even if you can do it well. Because there's a variety of reasons. First of all, you won't be absorbed. You won't like it, ultimately. That's the main reason. And you really have to be absorbed in what you're doing for Krishna in order to give devotion to Krishna. Otherwise, you're going to be unhappy because we have a psychophysical nature. And therefore, this other nice verse in the 4th chapter of the Gita, Brahmarpanam Brahmahabir Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmatena Gantavya Brahmakarma Samadhina. That when you're doing something for Krishna and you're absorbed in it, and of course you should be doing it to please Krishna, then that very activity becomes transformed into Brahman, or spirit. That's one of the famous verses in the Gita that the Brahma Kumaris chant all the time. But we're not the Brahma Kumaris. But it's a good verse. I mean, every verse is good. It means when one makes a full offering to Brahman, that offering, just like your offering, Krishna uses the word hadir or ghee. You know, that means ghee, not butter, not oil, not even corn oil. I've seen people do sacrifices with corn oil. And I thought, yeah, sure. I've been to people's houses and what type of oil do you know? Corn. It's cold pressed corn or something. Or no one's ever used olive oil, and no one's ever used. For some reason, no one's ever used olive oil, even though it's healthier than corn oil. No one's ever used petrol either, or motor oil. So anyway, so if you make a full offering to Brahman with the ghee actually becomes purified. Like Prabhupada said, when Prabhupada was doing a fire sacrifice and there was smoke all over the room, Prabhupada said, this smoke is purifying. Not like the cigarette smoke. It's not purifying, putrefying. But so the smoke is actually, everything's offered. The ghee, everything is offered to the fire. And it becomes spiritualized. I'll tell you one funny story. One time I was doing a fire sacrifice, and people brought their 1 ounce gold coins to as part of the fire sacrifice. They put them in right next to, surrounding the fire. And so I was thinking as I was doing the fire sacrifice, boy, this is the best fire sacrifice I've ever done. I become like Dhananjaya here. So, swaha, swaha, fantastic. There were like 5 gold, 1 ounce gold coins. That's a lot. So 1 swaha, swaha, okay. And so, at the end of the sacrifice, I said, thank you for offering all this to Krishna. And they said, no. We just want to purify our gold and take it back. So I think you all know the story of the Krishna book of King Riga, who accidentally gave away a cow twice to 2 Brahmins. He became a lizard in his last life. So you don't want to do that. Another time, someone came to the temple, and he had just bought a new Mercedes, and he said, brought it to the temple. He said, I want to offer this to Krishna. And I was thinking, wow. Here I am driving a Prius, We got an upgrade for me, So we did a puja and everything like that, car puja. It's interesting, you're worshipping a car. Anyway, so I know you're not. That's like sanctifying the car, putting garland on the car afterwards, and then after a while he drives it away. That's not offering to Krishna. That's using Krishna as the checkout counter man at the supermarket. It's like when you go to the supermarket or Walmart or wherever you go to buy things, then, don't put it in the way of the camera. So when you go to buy things at the supermarket or at Walmart or Sam's Club or wherever you buy things, there's always someone, there's a cashier. So when you buy something, you're not offering something to the cashier. So here I'm buying a new big screen TV for you, cashier. You're just paying your dues so you can walk away with the object without getting arrested. So that's how most people see a sacrifice. Isn't it? That's like a karma conscious sacrifice. Really, karma yoga sacrifice, whatever. So, anyway, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir means making a full contribution to Brahman. Brahman gets to keep it. And, of course, Krishna, Brahmaiti, Pandamaiti, Bhagavaniti, Shabhyate. Krishna is the supreme Brahman. So it means devotional service. And the point is, everybody, the person making the offering itself, everything becomes completely spiritualized by that process. So that's actually our process of purification. And then also we hear, when we do a fire sacrifice, what is it? Om Apavitra Pavitra Va Sarva Vashtam Gata Viva Yakshmaret Pundurikaksham Savaya Yantara Shuchi Sri Vishnu, Sri Vishnu, Sri Vishnu. That this verse states whether one is coming from a purified or unpurified background, whether it's a caste or whatever one has done in the last 24 hours, if one remembers the lotus-eyed Lord Buddha-Rigaksham, then one can actually approach the transcendental destination. One will become purified. So that's our method of purification. And in this regard, I'd like to read a verse that gives us, from the Bhagavatam, which I planned out, that tells us really how to get the utmost purification of the heart. To have no other, to have be void of any other desires. I mean, it's really hard. If you try to get rid of a desire, by getting rid of the desire, you know, I have that happen all the time. There's always come to me and they say, I have this anger. How can I get rid of it? And I say, well, you can't suppress it. You don't want to suppress it or repress it. You know, suppress means keep it down, repress means deny it. Somehow or other, you got to do something about it. But he thinks the more I want to get rid of the anger, the angrier I get. And the more I want to get rid of this lust, the more I overeat. And it's interesting because I try to help people with their diet so many times, and every time I tell people they eat less, they eat more. And every time I tell people they weigh too much, they get angry with me. So I stopped. Because they say, you just put me in anxiety, and to overcome my anxiety, I have to eat more. Right? I mean, sometimes people eat because of anxiety. It's anxiety being told that when you have a full plate of prasadam from you can't touch it. You know, just out of anxiety, you're going to eat faster and more. So people ask, how to get rid of lust, how to get rid of overeating, and all these other things like that. What's the secret? Well, you got to put something else in its place, and you got to have the mercy of the Lord. So here's a verse that tells us how to get the mercy of the Lord and become purified in the quickest possible fashion. And this is similar to what I was talking about yesterday. This is from the 5th canto, Srimad Bhagavatam. It's 5.12.12, if I remember the number exactly. And it's Jadabharata talking to Maharaj Rahugana. There's an interesting story that surrounds this before I read the verse. Jadabharata is the second incarnation of Bharat Maharaj. You all know that Bharat Maharaj, he was the son of Lord Vrishabhadev, and he was in charge of the kingdom, and he gave up his kingdom because he just considered all the material things to be like a hole into which one passes stool. I mean, like one latrine. He just walked away from it. And walking away from it, he was meditating very nicely, chanting his rounds in the forest, when there was a baby deer that was born from a mother deer, and the mother deer died, but she was scared. And he adopted this baby deer. And he was taking care of the little baby deer, rockabye baby deer on the treetop, whatever the song goes. And he was kissing the deer, taking care of the deer. It wasn't bad that he was taking care of the deer, but the problem was he became attached and neglected his spiritual activities. I mean, just like today, we were walking on the road, and we didn't see a baby deer, but we saw some turtles that were on the road, getting ready to walk on the road. So I didn't adopt them. I didn't say to Mayapur, let's take them home with us so I can give my love to a turtle. I said, put them in the woods so that it's less likely to go on the road. Actually, there's many turtles around where you live. For some reason. Big. Not big, about this size. You've seen them?
No, never.
Really? You've seen them. If you go for walks, you see the turtles all the time.
That's why probably we don't go.
You need to go. You just sit at home on an exercise bike all day. But you get fresh air. You're supposed to get fresh air,
That's right.
I just walk right on the same road where you live. It's very nice. And anyway, so but Bharat Maharaj, he had a different idea. He didn't just give the deer some Mahaprasadam like that, the baby deer. He actually got so attached that, he was saying this Gayatri mantra, he was thinking of the deer, And one day, as we know, he made a big mistake. The deer, he didn't show up, and he was looking, oh, feeling your separation. I'm considering a moment to be 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain. You know, it's like Vipralambha Seva with a deer. That's intense meditation. And he died. And he became a deer. The deer that he became, of course, Yam Yam Vapi Smaran Bhavam Yasatayante Kalagram. You become what you're thinking of at the time of death. And that deer that he became was a pretty pious deer that just stayed with the sages all the time and behaved himself. And he had memories at the Smarana. He was able to remember his past birth. And so the next birth after that was Jadabharta. And as Jadabharta, he acted stupid so nobody would do anything with him. Because it's a fact, if you act too intelligent, people have so many plans for you. Like Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was the most intelligent person, but he refused to graduate from the university because he knew if he graduated from the university, there'd be so much pressure to do work and take a job and get into entanglement and everything like that. So, of course, he was intelligent. He didn't act any other way. But Jadabharta acted very stupid, and there's a whole bunch of different stories that occurred, such as him be taken by dacoits who tried to offer him to the Bhadrakalyan, and the dacoits were killed by Bhadrakalya and her associates. His brothers used to put him out as a scarecrow in the field. There's so many different stories. But ultimately he ended up as the palanquin carrier for Maharaja Hugana. And as the palanquin carrier for Maharaja Hugana, that means there's four of them. He was one of them. He was avoiding the ants on the path. And that made the palanquin go like this, you know, like if you have a bad tire on your car, right? Flat tire, the car. So the palanquin was going like that. And so Maharaj Rahukana came down from the palanquin and started calling him all sorts of names. And Jadabharta started preaching to him philosophy. You know, the soul is, I'm neither fat or skinny or strong or weak or stupid. I'm a spirit soul. And then Maharaj Rahugana realized that he was dealing with a great devotee in the guise of a palanquin carrier. So you never know who you're dealing with. And so he apologized, and he had this interesting discussion about what is spiritual life and how to become pure. So this is the ultimate answer that the Jadabharta gave to King Rahugana. This is really one of the most important verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and I'll read it. Rahuganai tapasanayati nachijya nirvapanad rahadva nachandasa naiva jalagni suryari vinamahat pada rajo vishekam. And I'll read Prabhupada's translation. Let's see, where's the word by words. My dear King Rahugana, unless one has the opportunity to smear his entire body with the dust of the lotus feet of great devotees, one cannot realize the absolute truth. One cannot realize the absolute truth simply by observing celibacy, strictly following the rules and regulations of household life, leaving home as a vanaprastha, accepting sannyas. Actually, we used to think in ISKCON by accepting sannyas you became a pure devotee. Didn't work. So, and so other people used to think that by becoming a guru you became a pure devotee. We had one devotee was appointed to be a guru, and another devotee asked me, when did he get his pure devotee initiation? And I said, well, there's such an initiation, I want it too. There's not. Accepting sannyas or undergoing severe penances in winter by keeping oneself submerged in water or surrounding oneself in summer by fire and the scorching heat of the sun. There are many other processes to understand the absolute truth, but the absolute truth is only revealed to one who has attained the mercy of a great devotee. Wow. And let me read Prabhupada's purport. Actual knowledge, it's a short purport. Actual knowledge of transcendental bliss can be bestowed upon anyone by a pure devotee. I'll read that again. Actual knowledge of transcendental bliss can be bestowed upon anyone by a pure devotee. Wow. That's really an important sentence. Can bestowed upon anyone by a pure devotee. Vedeshu Durlabam Adurlabam Atmavakto, that's from the Brahma Samhita 533. One cannot attain the perfection of spiritual life simply by following the directions of the Vedas. Of course, that reminds me also of this verse, the conversation between Yudhisthira Maharaj and Yamaraj, where the conclusion is Tarko Pratishta Shutira Vipina. That one cannot understand Krishna consciousness or the Vedas simply by studying the Vedas, by argumentation and reasoning, because the Vedas are variegated, but only by Mahajanayena Gata Savanta. It's a similar statement in the Mahabharata. One has to approach a pure devotee, and there's this verse I just quoted. Anyavilashita Shinyum Jnana Karmayanavartam. That's from the CC Chaitanya Madhya Leela, is also from Nectar Devotion, 19:167. By the grace of such a devotee, one can understand the absolute truth, Krishna, and one's relationship with him. A materialistic person sometimes thinks that simply by executing pious activities and remaining at home, one can understand the absolute truth. That is denied in this verse. Nor can one understand the absolute truth simply by observing the rules and regulations of brahmacharya, celibacy. One only has to serve there's this statement, it's an absolute statement. One only has to serve the pure devotee. That will help one understand the absolute truth without fail. It's pretty heavy. So the moral of the story, the point is that if we want to attain that purity, first of all, why should we want to attain that purity? Well, yatma supersedite, savai pumsam paradharma, tata bhakti roksite, haitaki pratyata, yatma supersedite. The reason we should want to achieve it is because that's the only thing that's going to satisfy the self. Yatma supersedite. And then, Potaram, Jagatatasam, Sarvalokam Maheshwaram, Suradam, Sarvaputam, Yakwamam, Shantim, Richard. That's the only way we're going to become peaceful either. That's why. Even if we take it in a self-centered way, because the only thing that will satisfy the self is unalloyed love for Krishna, which includes a love for all Krishna's parts and parcels. That's a point I need to make. You can't say you love Krishna without loving Krishna's children, which is everybody. We mentioned this yesterday, the devotee called the Jata Shatrava, which means he whose enemy is not born. So you can't really say, you love Krishna. So, and also, another point I want to make was interesting. People don't like when I make this point. You also have to like yourself, too. Because you're also part and parcel of Krishna. Well, not that you spend all the time loving yourself, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the best devotee? Me. Facebook. My Facebook. Me book. So it's not that you spend all the time doing that, but still, you don't want to hate yourself either. You want to have some love for you, because you're a soul too, you're part and parcel of Krishna. Although some people disagree. Some people say that's false ego. But why? Why should you hate yourself? You should love yourself. Don't denigrate yourself. Don't go around saying, I'm a rascal, I'm a fool. Because that's also a disconnection we talked about yesterday, if you do that with yourself. You're not a rascal, you're not a fool. You may be acting like a rascal, but you're actually part and parcel of Krishna. You're a spirit soul. You're an illusion right now, but Krishna loves you. Krishna loves you, he's waiting for you to come back. He sent a spiritual master to try to get you. He's pulling all sorts of tricks to get you back to Godhead, so, be nice to yourself. Charity begins at home. So, Prabhupada even said that one time, when they was distributing prasadam, first the devotees eat. So the point is, that's the only thing that will satisfy the self, to love Krishna. Because we have this unlimited loving propensity. And so these are good reasons. And I know it's our duty, but, we do things more based upon emotion than on a sense of duty. Because it's who we are. Like Prabhupada said, the fish, in the water. That's who the fish is, that's his nature, its constitution. Mami bangsa jiva loke. Jiva bhuta sanatana. Manashashtani andriyani prakati. Yani karshati. That's our nature. So act according to your nature. and then you'll be satisfied. So that's the reason why we should become pure. And the methodology is given here. So what does that mean for us to get the mercy of a pure devotee? And in Krishna conscious movement, we all have spiritual masters, and of course Prabhupada is the ultimate Shiksha Guru of everybody in the Krishna conscious movement. And so what does it mean to get Prabhupada's mercy? And one time, one devotee said, I want the dust to your feet, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, well, then you're going to have to keep moving because my feet are always moving. Actually, I have a personal experience with that too. I used to go on the morning walks with Prabhupada on the beach, and I would go behind Prabhupada, and wherever there's a footprint, I would take the sand and throw it in my mouth. Tasty sand. And then I would steal Prabhupada's prasadam remnants. One time I arranged a program for Prabhupada, some reception at an airport, Dallas, Texas. And there was a big, Prabhupada ate from his fruit plate. And then I told the devotees, don't worry, I'll clean up. They thought I was being merciful. Real. He has a good service attitude. No, just because I did the whole plate, including the grape stems and the orange rinds and everything like that, and ate them. So, of course, that's very powerful. It's described that there's powerful substances, the foot bathing water, the dust of the feet, the prasadam remnants. These are all very powerful substances, and there's stories in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, especially about one devotee, Kalidas, who would go around eating everybody's remnants in the Navadvip area. But even more so than that is the principle of satisfying the spiritual master, satisfying Srila Prabhupada. So I'm trying to think what would satisfy Prabhupada. Here's another Prabhupada story, personal. I might as well tell some personal Prabhupada stories. One time I was with Srila Prabhupada in Mayapur, and I happened to have been in charge of a temple in South America, because I spent years in South America, where we basically distributed more books than the Radha Damodar party did in December. And anyway, it was a darshan with Prabhupada, and other devotees were there too. There was one devotee who was showing Prabhupada pictures of a new temple. And Prabhupada was looking at the pictures. He was pleased, very, very pleased. It was very nice, very nice. And then I said to Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, we distributed our temple. Distributed 35,000 of your Bhagavad Gitas in 1 month, hardbound Bhagavad Gitas. 35,000, that's a lot. And it's in Caracas, Venezuela, because Venezuela's not doing too well right now. But that's not because of me. So, and then Prabhupada, he didn't respond just like, oh, that's nice. He responded by opening his eyes wide, like, wow. And then I said to Prabhupada, here, this devotee, and we have our chief book distributor, his name was Ramanujacharya, that's a nice name. And all Prabhupada disciples, at that time, everyone's Prabhupada's disciple, obviously. I said, he had distributed 10,000 of those books in 1 month. The way we did it, I'll tell you the secret, we can't do it here. The way we did it is in South America, you could go on the buses with an armload of books and pass out a book to each and every person on the bus and go around and collect the money. And the bus drivers let you do it. Then you get off the bus, and we kept books stockpiled all over the city. So, and then we also had walkie-talkies. At that time, we didn't have mobile phones. So we could deliver more boxes of books to the different devotees. That's how we distributed 10,000 books, one devotee. So I said to Prabhupada, this devotee distributed 10,000 books, big books, 1 month. And Prabhupada's eyes opened even wider, and Prabhupada said, he has the mercy of Krishna. So, wow. You heard me tell the story before. And then I was thinking, but I'm the temple president. I organized the whole thing. What about me? I was almost ready to say that to Prabhupada. Without me, nothing happens. And Prabhupada looked around. He understood exactly what I was thinking. And he just looked around and he said, actually, you all have the mercy of Krishna. And then Prabhupada said, he just had to give one final zinger. He said, but it's just like the gopis. They have more mercy. So he was comparing to this preacher, the Sankirtan devotee. And Prabhupada did say elsewhere that one does Sankirtan in the mood of the gopis. Not that, everybody puts a sari on, but it's the mood like a separation, feeling intense mood. O Govinda, feeling your separation. I can quote this verse before. Jagaitam nimishena chakshusha pavashaitam shinyayatam jagat sarvam Govinda virahename. So, O Govinda, feeling yourself. So if one is engaged in preaching, or assisting the preaching too, temple presidents are nice too, because I'm pretty sure one of them is watching me. But assisting and pushing things forward, and making new devotees, and bringing people. There's another story that didn't involve me. That Tamal Krishna Maharaj came to America, and he was Prabhupada's right-hand man in India. And so Prabhupada, without Tamal Krishna Maharaj, was feeling really, I need someone here who was really, could deal in India. Because the rest of the devotees are dealing in India, Prabhupada called them damn cheap babus. Because they would pay 10 times the price for something, or at least 4 times the price for renting a pandal or something like that. And they would think, we got a good deal. And Prabhupada said, they paid 4 times the price for a pandal. Because they were comparing American prices with Indian prices. They thought rupees are the same as dollars. So, or anyway, so what happened is that Prabhupada wanted to bring Tamal Krishna Maharaj back to India. He thought, he came with that express purpose of bringing Tamal. You heard the story. And Tamal, he was more intelligent. Not than Prabhupada, but he was an intelligent guy. And so what he did is Prabhupada, as soon as Prabhupada came, he dressed up all his new devotees who, new bhaktas. He had them all shaped up, and each coming with one flower to present to Prabhupada. And they presented them to Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, okay, you can stay now. So he convinced Prabhupada. Because of his preaching, the point I'm making, because we talk about purity of the force, preaching is the essence. Books are the basis. Talking about those things. So, in one way or other, our business is to, create a revolution in the misdirected lives of an impious civilization, to quote a Bhagavatam verse. Tadvad visargo janatanga viplavo yasmin patislakama vadavachyapi namanam tashe shoki vitaniyat shrinvanti gayanti hirandiyat sadava. That those words, even if they're imperfectly composed, we're not so expert, they have the ability. And Prabhupada was also referring to his own initial translation of the Bhagavatam, because there were some grammatical mistakes there. They have the ability to create a revolution in the impious lives of a misdirected civilization. So somehow or other, and this is why I joined the movement 500 years ago, right after Lord Chaitanya left the planet. No, it's many years ago. 1971. That's why I joined the movement, because I wanted to save the world. So and that was Prabhupada's mood too. If you see a picture of Prabhupada, I'm going on too long, but anyway, if you see a picture of Prabhupada when he first took sannyas, his danda looks like a gun. Not the danda, but he's holding the danda like a gun. He looks like he's a soldier in the Marines, going out to conquer the enemy like World War II, going and just landing on the beach, Normandy Beach, and you look at the expression on his face; he's so determined.
Yeah,
it's amazing. That strength, the strength of determination, purpose, and desire to please his spiritual master. And that's the example Prabhupada gives us. Because many of Prabhupada's godbrothers had the same instruction from Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur to go to the Western world. Prabhupada was not anyone who spoke English nicely had that instruction. And so Prabhupada was not the only one, but Prabhupada took that as his life and soul. And Prabhupada, because Prabhupada is an interested devotee, but Prabhupada was showing us how one gets the mercy, accepting the spiritual master's instruction. And that's the purity. And that purity, you see that Prabhupada's force. Prabhupada had so much potency. Was it Kali Kalera Dhamma Krishna Nama Sankirtan, Krishna Shakti Vinana Yetar Gavartana? That in this day and age, the method of Dharma is Krishna Nam Sankirtan. Ekam Dharma is the only Dharma actually. But Krishna Shakti, one has to be imbued with, like purity is the force. Shakti. Shakti means like energy or force. Krishna Shakti Vinana. Without Krishna Shakti, you can't do it. And Krishna had Shakti. Prabhupada had Shakti. And he was able to do amazing things, like Prabhupada said, turning hippies to happies. It's amazing. Miracle. That's a miracle, not simply pulling some ashes out of the hair or something like that, or a rabbit out of a hat. So that's for the Prabhupada. And that's purity is the force. So, and we can also, that force is still there. For those of you who know Star Wars, let the force be with. Anyway, anyone here seen Star Wars?
Yes, I have seen.
You see, there's one honest person here. Other people, I'm sure others have, but they're not willing to raise their hand. So, no, you haven't. I know you haven't. Innocent devotee. So, so there's that force, Actually, the interesting thing about Star Wars is actually it was inspired by the Ramayana. You may or may not be aware of that. There's one person called Joseph Campbell who studied the Ramayana and Mahabharata, and he came out with certain characters out of the Ramayana and Mahabharata, and George Lucas actually utilized those for his films. You may or may not be. I'm not encouraging you to go to see movies, contaminated all your minds, But instead of watching these Bollywood movies, some dancing girls, where they dance around in a circle in the Bombay railway station in some romantic affair. Well, that's the essence of the Bollywood movies. Anyway, so getting back to the point. So he did, so he did take out, just like you have a monkey-like character in Star Wars. Chewbacca. I'm not going to get into it anymore. Sorry. Sorry about that one. So, but the point is that there's a force. There's a spiritual force, a force for good. There's also a force for bad. Look at Ravan. Ravan was not just some wimp. He was a powerful person, because he was engaged in tantric practices. There's left-handed tantric, and he was engaged in these practices. And of course, that was all Ram's pastime, as I understand that. And it was Ram's plan to put Ravan there, Jayamija. But still, there is a negative force in the universe, and there's a positive force. And so we can become instruments. That's what Krishna said to Arjuna, become an instrument. Actually, it's interesting. Same thing. Krishna said to Arjuna, become an instrument. He didn't say become the source of the force or become a hero. He said become an instrument. He said everyone is already killed anyway. Isn't it? Universal form, everyone's dying, going to die in it. You become an instrument, you get the credit. Become an instrument. So we can also become an instrument if we connect to the powerhouse. Another metaphor. If you connect the wires to the powerhouse, they have electricity. And if you don't, they just sit there. They look the same. Until you plug something in, you won't know the difference. So we can also become, that's what purity is the force. That's it again. Shakti. Purity is the force. So, anyway. Okay. I think we're over time by a lot. All right, so any questions or comments? Yes? Yes? No?
Thank you, Maharaj. So I had a question. It may sound a little naive actually, but you were talking about how we want to please Krishna. So say I'm doing Didi Seva or I'm dressing my Didis and I want them to look attractive, but they look attractive to me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it really, how would I know that it's pleasing Krishna? It pleases my senses, but...
That's an interesting question which Prabhupada answered. One time, Prabhupada was asked, is Krishna happy? You're talking about the deities. And Prabhupada said, you're the pujari, you should know. And I know that from deity worship. You know, I for years I did worship Radha and Krishna in the temple. When we first installed the deities in North Carolina temple, I was dressing the deities, I was cooking for them and everything like that, until I got kicked off the altar by the head pujari. Anyway, the reason she kicked me off the altar, she didn't like the way I dressed the deities. Anyway, that's another story. You heard that story? No, I won't tell it. So anyway, but I could see Krishna would smile. I can still see today. I went to one temple where Krishna was not being served very nicely, and Krishna and Radharani looked like Lord Nrsingadev. I mean, even I could see that. It was just like, oh my God, when did you install Lord Nrsingadev? No, that's Radha Krishna. So you can see when Krishna's smiling. And Krishna will smile, the point I make, Krishna will smile the most when we're somehow or other participating in bringing Krishna consciousness to others. You're distributing prasadam. Let's say you offer prasadam to your home deities, or you offer bhoga, and then it becomes prasadam. And then you give it out, and Krishna will be very pleased. Krishna says in the Gita, no one is more dear to me than he who teaches us Krishna consciousness, Bhagavad Gita knowledge to the devotees. And of course everyone's a devotee. So that's a secret. Yuyatama. The most secret of all secrets. Raja Vidya, Raja Gunya. Anyway, so try as far as possible to bring others to Krishna's lotus feet. And your deities, you worship them and pray to them for that potency, and just, offer things to them and give it out to people. The prasadam distribution is very powerful. Prabhupada said it's kitchen religion, and many people join the movement because prasadam, actually especially things cooked in ghee. We talked about this the other day. Like Prabhupada, in the early days, everything was cooked in vegetables, obviously. Obviously, certain things weren't cooked in ghee. Like, I can't think of anything that wasn't cooked in ghee. So, I'm sure there were certain things. Oh, the nectar drink wasn't cooked in ghee. So, we were discussing at your house, like all the different preparations we had in the Sunday feast. Sunday feast was, everything was cooked in ghee. But we had pakoras, cooked in ghee, cauliflower pakoras, cooked in ghee. You know cauliflower pakoras?
Yeah.
Malpura, you know malpura? With strawberry sauce, cooked in ghee. Strawberry sauce wasn't cooked in ghee, but the malpura was cooked in ghee. We had samosas with this very dark filling that we would make, because I cook too. I know how to cook everything, which I don't do anymore. But samosas with cauliflower and peas, and you cook it really dark and you spice it, so it's dry. And then with the little curly things all over it, instead of the flat things they call samosas nowadays. Mm-hmm. So, and what else? Of course, there's nectarine, sweet rice,
Puri.
halva. Puris, the puris we made in such a way, cooking ghee. The puris we made in such a way that we would put a little yogurt in the dough so it would get crispy. They weren't like, nowadays you take the puris out of the oil. And they flop around a lot. This is a modern puri. But the way Prabhupada, because I learned from Prabhupada. I mean, so the way we cooked the puris, they would just they would stay puffed up. And so we had white puris and whole wheat puris, which we called chup puris. Anyway, and sometimes in the white puris we put powdered sugar on them. And did I miss anything else? Of course, I forgot about the vegetables. There's a wet vegetable and a dry vegetable, both of which had ghee in it. And globules. I forgot about the globules. Sorry about that. And did I forget anything else? I must have forgotten. There's other things. Nectar drink, all that. And that was a standard Sunday feast. And once people ate, Prabhupada said if you take food cooked in ghee, you'll never forget the taste. And that is true. People, meat eaters, will give up their desire for eating meat if they can take food cooked in ghee. Of course, I don't anymore. I mean, for a variety of reasons. I think after a few years, I've had enough ghee. So anyway, so we're kitchen religion. So if people have a cooking skill, they can distribute prasadam. And you can also distribute prasadam like the Western people can relate to. Like Prabhupada liked to distribute cookies. One time there's another Prabhupada story with me and Prabhupada. I was with Prabhupada going on a radio or a television interview. Anyway, we went with Prabhupada and I brought a whole plate of cookies. You know, the richest regular sugar cookies, which Prabhupada called Prabhupada cookies. And then we went in, I forgot to give the cookies out to the people. And so I said to Prabhupada, you know, I'm sorry, I forgot to give the cookies out. And Prabhupada said, give me the plate. So Prabhupada ate like 20, 30 cookies on the plate. And Prabhupada also liked nice, tasty prasadam, as we mentioned before, when they tried to give Prabhupada just some boiled subji. Prabhupada said, let the starvation committee go to hell. Is that?
He ate 20 or 30 cookies?
Yeah, he kept eating. I don't know how many, but he kept asking for more and more. I had the plate in back. I was in the back seat. Prabhupada was in the front, and I kept passing up the cookies to Prabhupada, or passing the plate for Prabhupada to take it. And I think they were all gone by the time I finished. I don't have an exact count, but it was a lot. And sometimes after Prabhupada preached, he was pretty hungry. Srutakirti talks about that too. Prabhupada sometimes, and when he come back from preaching, they eat puris and crush it in milk with some bananas in it. And he would, you know, because Prabhupada was like a soldier. He was a soldier. He's out there preaching. And I was just listening to some conversations Prabhupada had with Mr. Patel on the beach in Bombay. I don't know if any of you heard these conversations, because Mr. Patel was like an impersonalist. And he was Prabhupada's friend, but Prabhupada was like yelling at him. He said, blasting him, you know. Mr. Patel kept coming back for more. And when he didn't show up, Prabhupada would say, where is that Mr. Patel? You know, so he'd be presenting different persons like Dr. Radhakrishnan and other people, and Prabhupada was, he's rascal, you know, so strong. You know, Prabhupada was extremely strong in his preaching, and compassionate, you know, all good qualities. But the main thing is his enthusiasm. You can see where Prabhupada's heart was to save people. It was almost like a fireman going into a burning building to rescue someone. You know, let's say there's a little baby in the building, and the fireman just like rushes in, risks his own life, carries out the baby, and that's Prabhupada. And that's a role model. I mean, that's a real role model. Someone who rushes into the Western world or the Maya's den, which is where we are now. Of course, India is pretty much like that now, too. If you go into Bombay, it's not, or Delhi, it's not any better. And he rushes into it, you know, leaves Vrindavan just to save the dying souls. And that's, you know, so we should assist Prabhupada in his mission, that's the point. Okay. I think, we are way late. Okay, so I guess that's it, right? All glories to Srila Prabhupada, to the Prabhupada. Stop it, save it. You have to save it. Yeah.